Hey everyone, welcome to the show. And in today's episode, we're going to be discussing how to swap out your bike stem. Alrighty, to begin, first, check what type of bolts you have. Allen key, hex key, make sure you use the right tool. Make sure you insert the tool fully into the bolt and then walk the tension down a little bit per bolt. Don't just go full loose on the first try. Walk the tension down. Do that for the faceplate. Do it for the bolts holding the stem to the steer tube. Stem is off, and we want to go ahead now and inspect the steer tube. And what you're looking for is any bite marks or anything like that that could have been etched into the steer tube. So if you run your headset too loose, at one of the spacer lines, you might see a dig mark. You could see all kinds of stuff. You might even find a crack. So while it's off, go ahead and take a look at the steer tube. And once I put the camera down here, I'm gonna pull up on this top cap, take a look at the bearings, maybe wipe them down, make sure those are good to go before I go and put on the new stem. This is certainly a good time to do a headset service. You've already got the stem off. If you've got the time, put in the effort, wipe the bearings down. A little bit of grease goes a long way. Okay, so I have the faceplate of the new stem off and I have the bolts, and the bolts are completely dry. There's no grease, there's no nothing on them. So I want to get a little bit of grease on these threads. To do that, I'm going to use a small tube of grease as opposed to a tub, and the hole in this tube is just big enough specifically for, to slide a bolt in and for it to get a nice thin little coating of grease on the threads. So I'm just going to give you a little close-up. You can see my bad nails, but you can also see this bolt. So we really just want the grease in those threads, and I could actually, if I'm just so, kind of massage it in. The grease just needs to be in those threads, and it doesn't need to be more than that. You don't need gobs of grease. That little bit is just gonna help prevent salt and other, muck from getting in there and corroding the bolt or corroding the stem. Make sure to wipe down the inside of the stem, free of grease, free of any debris, nice and clean. The gap. Let's just see if we can take a look here. The gap here and the gap underneath need to be even. What you can do is you can take your hand, put one finger there, put one finger on the bottom, make sure that gap is even. When we tighten down these bolts, we are gonna walk up the torque. Boom, 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 boom. We're gonna keep going back and forth, and we're gonna walk that torque up 1 Newton meter at a time to make sure those bolts are nice and even. Now, in order to get the right headset tension, we first need to start with the right number of spacers. So let me remove this top cap and show you what I'm talking about. So when we set up compression on the headset, we need to make sure that there's no steer tube bottoming out against the top of this top cap here. I'm going to bring this into view so you can see. So essentially what needs to happen is this top cap needs to press down on the spacers going around the steer tube. You see, even if ultimately this is what I want it to look like aesthetically, when we actually set the compression, you can see if I lift this up, there's just not enough room for this top cap to press down on that spacer and properly compress the headset. It's going to press down that tiny little bit, but then it's just gonna bottom out against the steer tube and you're not gonna get compression. So what we need to do is we need to use a bigger spacer to get it started. So we're gonna use this 10 mil, and you can see it has plenty of space, so the top cap is not going to bottom out. And I will set the compression with this spacer, and then once I do that, tighten down the stem. Now I can undo this and do whatever I want with it. So I get the handlebars straight, and then I tighten the top cap to what I want the tension to be. Then I tighten the stem bolts. Top cap first, then the stem. Okay, once I got the stem centered with the wheel and it was nice and in line, I tightened down the stem bolts, and I want to show you what a properly tensioned headset kind of looks like the best I can visually. One, if I pick the bike up and kind of give it a little bounce here, silent. There's no rattling. Two, if I hold the front brake and I wiggle, it's a little hard to do one-handed, but I wiggle the bike forward and backward, whatever. There's no perceptible motion in the headset. Two good signs. Now, is it too tight? Well, that you just have to pick up and feel. And there's a little bit of personal preference. Sometimes it's good to make a headset just a little extra tight, but right here, notice you don't hear the bearings, they're not under tension, and it's not rattling or shaking at all, so that is a properly tensioned headset. A new stem on our bicycle. Thanks for watching the video, and I hope you found this informative. I hope you didn't come down with a case of stem envy for that 130 on this Domane 5.2. Anyway, much appreciated, and stay tuned for the next video.